Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. I'm so excited to bring you episode 4 of a 4-part series I did interviewing Mark Bennett, a guy who has revolutionized the way to motivate and communicate at every sport, and Alan Keene, who is actually on the front lines, on the court, coaching basketball with those techniques in mind. So here's a little taste of what's going to happen in episode 4 and let you know why it's so valuable.
We use like a 3A principle. So if someone shouts across, or you're close enough to do a hand touch, or it's a thumb up, if I'm shouting as a player live on the court to someone, either it's a tactical thing or a commitment thing based on the behaviors we've pre-agreed, we want, first of all, acknowledge acceptance. I'm accepting that player's reaching out to me because they want to help me get better. Not, who is that player telling me something? They're junior to me. I'm not getting that player saying something to me. That's unacceptable. They're reaching out, so you have to accept. Then you acknowledge. Acknowledge is, if it's distance, I'll put the thumb up, yeah, I'm acknowledging and I'm accepting. I've acknowledged it internally. I've accepted, you know I've heard you. The last one is act. Now I'm going to act on it. If I'm not sprinting back and someone said, Stevie, show me a sprint right now, yeah, and I'm sprinting within a split second, because that's those 3 A's.
In case you missed anything from episodes 1, 2, or 3, here's a little snippet we had from episode 3 last week that really gives you insight into what we're talking about and why it works.
So we don't want players outcome-led. I just lost that pass that didn't come off. The hoop didn't go in, whatever it was. No, I'm not interested. Talk to me about your choices and your execution, because we know it's not always going to come off, but we can learn from that. And also, importantly, and it links into another thing I want to discuss, Nick, is we never want to just talk to players or challenge them when they do something wrong, because all we're doing then is we're getting them to reflect on the very things we don't want them to repeat. Now, importantly, yes, we need to look at that, but if they do something exceptionally well they've never done before and it's been successful, a tactic, a choice, an execution, we need to be nailing on that as well. Talk to me about what just happened then. What made that so more successful than we've ever done before? Because I want you to repeat that. So do you understand what you did there to make that so successful?
So don't forget, we have a live show tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, and we'll go over more in depth what we talked about. I'm sure you have lots of questions we'll be able to answer live. So join us then on YouTube right here for me, Mark, and Alan as we'll answer all of your questions. But for right now, let's show you episode 4 and even more great insights, probably the best episode of them all. Mark, can we really quickly attack the science behind the negative kind of coaching that we're sort of addressing here? What happens to the brain? Just to help coaches sort of understand maybe why they wouldn't want to do it, what the brain does and how it reacts to even the body language, which I think is a really big thing that I'm sure you discuss a lot with the coaches. The body language, the language coming out of their mouths itself, and then just the emotion that they're displaying and how that affects the brain and their performance.
Yeah, so if I can use that simple analogy, if anyone's cycled down a hill fast or down a wood fast or skied down a hill fast through trees, if your mind is seeing a tree coming up in front of you and you go, I don't want to hit the tree, I don't want to hit the tree, what's going to happen? You're going to hit the tree because your brain is focused on what you don't want to do. The brain can't, if I said, okay, do not think of a candy bar right now, you're thinking of a candy bar. Right. But if we focus the brain on what do we want to do, where do we want to go? We want to go left around down that curve, and the mind is present in what you want to do with confidence and commitment, you end up doing what you're thinking. So if we look at that simple analogy and then connect that into coaching, where do we want a player's brain to be? Well, we want their state to be good. We want their eyes open. We want them in the present. We want them talking about what exactly they're going to do. And we want them to be able to listen to us without fear and shut down. We want them to go, coach is talking to me. Coach has got my back. Coach is saying something. You want to help me get better. I'm listening to coach because he's here for me. So then whatever coach says, it's going in. And now coach has got to be smart to say, in this moment with this player, what do I need to say to have the desired impact I want? And how do I need to say it that's going to work with this player, in this player's state, in this situation? Might be different to another player. So then I'm giving it in the right way. They know coach is saying to me, my ears are open, my eyes are open because coach is saying something. Even if it's hard and direct, coach is saying it because he's here to help me get better and he's not killing me with it. So if you think about that as a mindset we want players in the present focused on what they're going to do with the confidence to do it. We want them to recognize when they're not doing it and be able to put it right first. So if you think about it, linking back to what Alan said, So Alan, we use, there's loads of tools we use. The rule of three we use, we can go in a bit later. We've got the resets we use. An example of the reset is, you can use it in many ways, but a great example, if you've pre-agreed, guys, you've pre-agreed the non-negotiables. So Alan shared those things. Non-negotiables are things you pre-agree at the beginning of the season, and you say, this we do every single time. So whatever we agree, this is going to be every single time. It's not now and again thing. It's not like, oh, let's pick something up in what we're going to do this session. No, every single time. So we really nail them on it, and then we relentless scanning for it. So a reset might be, we're seeing it. What we want the players on court to live to see it. So we're not sprinting or communications become unacceptable. For someone to do something on the court to get it back to acceptable. What we don't want them to rely on us to give a timeout for them to go, oh yeah, our communication was poor, coach. Because the question has to be then, okay, when did you recognize it? Oh, straight away. Why didn't you do something about it? I want you to show me the answer, not tell me the answer. I don't want to wait to come in and tell me. If you're recognizing, I want you to do something about it. So the timeout and the reset is the last resort. We want to give them time to change that live. We can only get them to do that if we build an environment where they're saying, one, I need to be aware of what I'm doing. I need to know what that feels and looks like. And once I've done that, I need to be not just looking at myself. I need to make sure, is everyone else committing? Is someone's head going down? Are they being lazy? If they're being lazy and not running back, I don't wait for the coach to say something. I reach out to Stevie and say, Stevie, and I need to know what to say to Stevie to get him to sprint. Back to effective communication. Effective communication, there's so much nonsense going around, Nick, about what it is, all these lists. Nonsense. Effective communication is effective if it has the desired impact. So it's no good me saying, well, I said it to Jimmy. I said it loud. I said it in the right way. I said the right thing, and Jimmy didn't do anything. Well, it's ineffective. So what do you need to do? So we're back to the hand touch that Alan said. We use like a 3A principle. So if someone shouts across, or you're close enough to do a hand touch, or it's a thumb up. If I'm shouting as a player live on the court to someone, either it's a tactical thing or a commitment thing based on the behaviors we pre-agreed, we want, first of all, acknowledge acceptance. I'm accepting that player's reaching out to me because they want to help me get better. Not, who is that player telling me something? They're junior to me. I'm not getting that player saying something to me. That's unacceptable. They're reaching out, so you have to accept. Then you acknowledge. Acknowledge is, if it's distance, I'll put the thumb up, yeah. I'm acknowledging and I'm accepting. I've acknowledged it internally. I've accepted, you know, I've heard you. The last one is act. Now I'm going to act on it. If I'm not sprinting back and someone said, Stevie, show me a sprint right now. Yeah, and I'm sprinting within a split second because that's those 3 A's. So when we start breaking into it, the coach has to think in the same way. I don't want to be quickly jumping in at players, giving them the answer, because that's killing the very team I want. I want a live dynamic team that can adjust and adapt live to the opposition in a game. I've only got so many timeouts, so I can't keep stopping and telling them. If I'm focused on a player, I'm now not scanning the game, so now I'm not doing my job that well. So we want to get them, one itself, do you recognize you're unacceptable? Do you know what to do and be present just to commit to it without fear? If you're not sure, can I ask a player around me? Yes, you definitely can. If I'm seeing another player now, I'm seeing and not committing or not making the right tactical choice, I have the confidence and the skill set now, because I've practiced it and practiced, to say the right thing, and they do the 3 R's: acceptance, acknowledge, act. Live, when that's not happening, then we have the players on the sideline. What are you seeing in practice? Okay, what are you going to do about it? Off you go. Then we have the coach who goes, right, no, I'm giving them time to sort it out. They're not sorting out. This is unacceptable. I'm stepping in. Now, that may be, guys, stop. This is not good enough. We're dragging our heels right now. We're lazy. Let's start again. Line, center line, we're going again. 5 seconds again, this is not good enough. The coach can adopt that. There's nothing wrong with that. If the coach feels, managing their state, that's appropriate, and the players know, coach's directive, not venting there, that was right. Yeah, we should have sorted this. And it may be, coach, now deciding, right, I'm bringing them in, guys, why have I called a timeout now? Why have I brought you in? What is it? Because that may be the appropriate thing to do. Maybe I'm just rotating this one player. Okay, review. Talk to me what you were just doing now, that last 20 seconds. Talk me through it. And it may be a behaviour thing. I've talked to me about the choices. So what are you going to change? Great, hand touch. I'm going to put you back in now. When I put you back in, what are you going to show me in this next 20 seconds? I'm going to show you this, coach. Great, hand touch. Show me. So all of a sudden now, it's all based on, I don't want the player focused on hitting the tree. I want the player focused on what they're going to do with confidence without fear. And it's that type simple analogy that the coach has to be mindful of.
Alan, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think a really prevalent point that Mark made there in relation to your question is the environment. And you read a lot about psychological safety in the workplace, and a feeling of I don't fear a consequence of failure. Like for us, the only failure, I tell the guys, you only fail if you choose not to commit to what's in your head. So for me, the environment and how you build it, how you shape it, how you start it is absolutely probably the most prevalent thing you'll do in the year. And if you are building an environment where the players feel free to have a voice and a choice, but know they'll be challenged on their commitment, not the outcome of their choice, I think you're building I know you're building an environment where they feel safe. You talked about how does it impact the brain. You're back to confidence. How do you build their confidence? Well, you don't lead with an emotional state of mind as a coach, and you don't critique the outcome of their choices, but you give them affirmations with, I love your commitment. Your commitment right now is really good. So if you're talking, I don't want to get onto praise and affirmations and all that stuff, but how you build the environment gives them the psychological safety and the ability and the mindset to not fear the consequence of the outcome of an action.
I keep hearing the word commitment, and I want to make sure that we translate that properly, that it's not just your accents meaning something else that we don't think in America. But can you give me a differentiation between commitment and playing hard?
Playing hard, if I start with commitment, and what is commitment for each individual? Are we as coaches hyper aware of what, Nick, your commitment is like to get back in transition defense, as opposed to Mark's commitment to get back in transition defense? Because one of you is going to be faster than the other. And what do I mean by faster? Faster with your speed of mind, first of all, the light going off in your head of what I have to do, and then the foot speed to get there. So there's an element of you have to know what is a 10, what is your player at his best? What does the best version of Nick look like? Okay, what's Nick at a 5 out of 10? What does he look like? I need to be aware of that. But the game changer is when you're aware of it. So when we talk about commitment, it's and playing hard. What is playing hard? Could you term it commitment? If you perceive it the same way I'm perceiving commitment, I'm all right with you saying playing hard. I don't have an issue with the terminology whatsoever. And for me, I think the terminology that's best used is the one that makes the connection with the player the most. So in terms of that definition, that's where I'd go with it.
I'd link into that a bit, Nick, for you. And it's pointing what Alan said there, is if someone uses a term, is first, before getting into a dialogue, what's your understanding of that? What does that mean to you? Often I hear that term, and this is where I think it's slightly different. When we're talking about commitment, we're talking about commitment to a choice you made based on what you saw. So we're going back to, I'm scanning, I'm seeing an opportunity or a threat, and I'm making a choice to deal with that opportunity or threat, and I'm now committing 100% to the choice I've made. Whereas the other might be, I'm just running around like a bull in a china shop, I'm just going hard at everything, but actually, are you seeing what your opportunities and threats are, and you're making a smart choice and then committing to it? So that's sometimes where the subtle difference is. Look at this player, he plays hard. Yeah, but he's not making great choices.
Right.
So, yeah, he's playing hard, but actually he's not playing smart. So it's understanding the perception of when someone says that. What do you mean by that?
I agree. And I'm sort of doing this, in a greedy way, because when I was growing up and I had these Bobby Knight-style coaches, I just figured I'd play harder than my opponent, and that would, get me better versus, well, what about all that skill work we could have been doing versus just I'm going to put my head down, let the smoke come out of my ears, and then I'm not balanced, I'm not relaxed enough to make a shot from outside of 2 feet because of that, or maybe not even inside 2 feet. And I feel like that's my worry of these trigger words of like, you're not playing hard enough, all the sort of vague tropes that coaches like to use. You're not playing like a team. And in reality, the overall arching thing I can kind of take away is it's sort of a question-based approach in a way, right? You need the feedback from the players themselves, which is a huge leap for, I think, a lot of coaches to make. But is that fair to say that this is really sort of a, when you say, you know, you're trying to empower the players and make it focus on them, it's really just a question based. Like, can you ask questions to get them to where you need them to go?
Let me go to a whole new place here, Nick.
Okay.
Questions for me, and bear with me, people will be listening to this and going, oh my God, what's he talking about? Questions for me are only a facilitator to fill the gap of the information they haven't shown or presented to you. What I mean by that is, if you look at special forces around the world, and you look at adventurous training, mountaineering, one thing they use is experiential learning. It's a basic self-validating review process. It's basically, right, based on what you see, you make a choice on what you see, and then you reduce your commitment, the choice, the execution, and would you change anything? They used it climbing mountains, Everest, K2, to stop people making crazy choices when they're fatigued and oxygen jet. So special forces use it around the world. They use it for a reason. They use it for a reason because whatever plan you plan never comes off because of the opposition. So we need soldiers, especially at the special force level, that can adapt based on what's happening in front of them. They still have the principles. Everyone reads each other. No, they're not going to shoot their friendly fire. They understand that, but they're adapt. So what we want to do, we want to get players that actually can do that. So they're showing us the answer. And then when they come in, instead of us having to ask them 20 questions, we've taught them how to self-review. So we can just say, what have you got? What are you seeing? And then they just start talking, right, well, this is what I saw. These were the choices. I went for this one. Next time, I should have done that. Actually, no, it didn't come off. It was the right thing to do. So now we're just going, I don't need to ask any questions. Yeah, I saw the same. Great. And now we're looking at, right, no, they're a bit vague here. And they go, well, actually, well, what if this happened? What if the guy had done this? What are you going to do then? So now I'm just getting the detail. So this is what I think where people get a bit confused. If the players are reliant on us to come in and we have to ask a ton of questions to get the information from them, we've done them an injustice. We are not teaching them how to self-review because that's the very tool we want them to do live on court in a game or on a rugby pitch or on a soccer pitch, football. It makes no difference. So the question for me is the gap filler if they haven't presented, shown, and shared their evaluation. Hence why we need to teach players how to self-evaluate.
Alan,
does that link into yours, Alan? Because that was a big step, wasn't it, Alan? We talked about it's getting players, don't tell me the answer, show me the answer.
Yeah, and I think that's a big one. You know, when I ask a player a question about, you know, and again, it's a facilitator, as Mark says, to fill a gap. Like, and sometimes the gap is my gap. I want to know what do they see because, like you said a while ago, Nick, I don't see everything. I don't look through their lens. I can't because of where I am on the court, and I just can't look through the lens of 10 players in a practice session or 5 players on the court, or even one player when he's defending a ball screen because I'm not at the same angle he's at. I don't feel and see, and I don't feel the same thing. So his perspective is completely unique in comparison to mine. So to ask the question is to fill the gap, but is a facilitator for sure. But when they give you a response, and I find when my guys were giving me responses and it was their true reflections, and very often they would nail it. They would, what I would perceive as them nailing it. Like, that's really on the ball. You've nailed that right there. And my question is always to them, like, again, influenced by Mark, well, what prevented you from doing it? Because you have the answer. So now, you know, and they always go, well, I don't know why. And then you're back to confidence and all the other dynamics. But the follow-up for me then is always, okay, go and show me. Or, you know, I come into a timeout. I mean, to be like this year, I was pushed out of a few timeouts. Not pushed out. I couldn't get into 1 or 2 timeouts because the players were really on it. And I'm saying that in an exaggerated manner. Like, you know, by the time I'd get into the timeout, you'd have 40, 45 seconds left. And a couple of our pro guys were really on it. And AJ in particular, who Mark's very familiar with, was really hot on problem solving some of the issues. And, you know, we'd get to the end of the timeout and say, guys, great, just go and show me right now. And that was it. I mean, what more was there to add? It would have been paralysis by analysis for me. What was the purpose? There was no value for me to add in that timeout. It would just became, right, guys, go and show me.
Well,
and
you know, through my experience of watching just, you know, tons of tape, mostly NBA, but at every level, you know, you start to realize that there is this sort of jazz that's going on the court. That's the freedom the players have. They can do things that you never would have imagined. And then you'll see even like, the most renowned coaches in the world make really bad mistakes. And then you start to wonder, well, geez, they looked so good with like that player playing for them for that long time. And then they don't look so good maybe, or they look like a lesser coach making these dumb mistakes now. And you start to wonder, well, maybe it was the player and a couple of those players that really were empowered and were able to not cover for that coach, but certainly make it look a lot better than it does now. And I'm starting to wonder now, from my coaching perspective, it's like, geez, that is sort of a sign to me that, it is the players. They probably deserve more credit than a lot of times they get, especially from these coaches that have these big reputations.
Mark, can I share a story based on what Nick has just said there? And it was when you sat beside me in my very first year with you, we were playing an international game. And Mark, it was a pre-European Championship preparation game. So Mark was able to sit on the bench with me. And, I'm coaching an international game, Nick, and Mark's got a GoPro camera on my chest. And I'm like, I'm not used to this. And I'm way out of my comfort zone thinking, this is crazy. My assistant coaches are sitting beside me going, not comfortable. Everyone's uncomfortable, and Mark said, look, do you want, he asked me, he said, do you want to go for it? And I thought, you know what? I'll go for it. Absolutely. Let's do it. What's the worst that could happen? And, we agreed some things before the game that I would use it. He said to me at the start of each timeout, he said, I want you to just say one thing to them. I don't want, and he said, I want you to say to them, you can choose how you phrase it yourself. And that phrase for me was, talk to me. So I would come into the timeout, put the chair down, whatever, go down on my knees or whatever. And the players were used to me, Nick, of coming in and having verbal diarrhea and just unloading on them with loads of different things and topics. And as much as I could talk about to shows, probably looking back at how smart I was, maybe to win them over, put on a clinic in front of them in 60 seconds. You know how it is. And, as I got up from the bench, referee called a timeout. Mark nudged me in the side with his elbow. And he said to me, remember what we agreed before the game. So I took a big deep breath and thought, all right, here we go. This is not good. So I crouched down in front of the players and I said, guys, talk to me, guys. What are you seeing? And there was complete silence. I was met with silence because the players weren't used to it. It was alien to them that I would come in there with that approach. So 45 seconds went by. It was a bit awkward. Didn't get much out of it. And, the referee called us back in and I went back to, top of the bench and I just felt really uncomfortable. So Mark just said to me, look, stick with it. You never know how this works out. Stick with it. Call a second timeout a little bit later on. Or the other coach calls a timeout and I say to the guys, guys, talk to me. And there was a silence for about 10 seconds. And one of the quietest players that summer, and I think they were all quiet, Nick, because I spoke so much. But one of the players said to me, he said, Coach, they're switching all ball screens. Why don't we just attack the switch out of the post because it's a massive mismatch? And at that point, now that sounds, for any basketball coach listening to this, you guys have to give me a thumbs up and say that that's the most basic thing that you could see, recognize, acknowledge, and punish. Well, we weren't doing that. I was calling set plays and trying to look for the execution of the tactics. And when this player said that to me, it kind of stumped me because it made me feel a bit silly with how I was feeling at that moment in time. And I said to him, okay, all right, let's keep going back to our middle third ball screen. Let's get the ball down inside, however you want to do it. Gave him, had a discussion of how to get into it, and then let him go with it. And, and after the game, it was a real revelation for me that what else do they know that I'm not allowing them to say? What other secrets have they got? What else are they feeling and seeing that I could use to help us to be better? And that was a real moment I turned the corner. I felt it was some good evidence for me that actually this Mark Bennett guy might be all right,
Right.
Now, I want to link a few things into that, Nick, just to help the audience that's watching, listening. Is there's a transition. This is skill development for players, not just for the coach, for the players. So if we talked about this is software, if you like, everything we talked about the player, what they can see, how they can manage their state, how they can communicate, how they can act, make choices without fear, not allow negative to come in, stay present. It's software. It's a skill. You need to train the skill the same as you do a dribble or a pass, anything else. So here's the problem. If I said to a novice, okay, this is a basketball. I want you to dribble and do a layup now with that against that guy. A novice has never picked up a ball. Would they be able to do it? No, of course they wouldn't be able to do it. And any coach would go, of course they wouldn't be able to do it. It take ages to develop that level of skill. Okay, so when we start putting this software in, expect low-level response, because they'll be used to coach just talking. They'll be used to coach working out for them. They'll be used to cruising for a practice session and not having to engage their brain because they've learned how to get away with it. And all of a sudden they're going, I'm now uncomfortable. This is not work for me. And that's where, once we need to get them to see the value first, and then we need to understand they're novices at the software. You'll have a few magic people that worked it out already, or they've had good coaching and mentoring. You will get them, but it's a journey of development. So it's really important. When Alan did that with that team, we'd already done a practice session where Alan let me lead the session, and we saw some real shifts in the behavior. But they'll regress very quick. And so we knew they had the capability to see what was going on, but they were never given the time or permission to share what they saw. So as soon as they start working, it goes, I can view and share what I'm seeing. I'm now allowed to look at it a bit more. Then all of a sudden, they realize their role has changed to what their expectation of what a player was before. Before something, my job as a player is just to do exactly what coach tells me and nothing else. That's it. Now what we're saying is, well, actually, the best teams in the world, we need players to think effectively for themselves, not go haywire and do something totally different than coach wants, still follow the framework of the coach and the things we practice. But they're always, in every situation, there's more than one choice, generally. But we want you to have the confidence and the skill to make the right choice. So I'm going to challenge you in practice. I'm going to build this up. So in a game under pressure, I'm more confident as a coach. When there's 3 or 4 choices coming to you, you're going to make the right one. Not just the right one theoretically, but the right one you can execute as player as Danny. Stevie can't execute these 3 yet, so pick one of the 2 you can in the game. We can practice a 3 in practice. But again, linking back to, there's still going to be times in timeouts where the coach has to say, guys, we're going to do this. So it's getting everyone listening to understand this isn't what you only do. This is a missing element to many coaches, and the reason why players can't do it is we don't give them the time and put effort into developing this level of software. But a coach can still tell, say, and there's times when a coach will shout, but it's not emotionally led. It's because consciously they think this is what I need to do right now to have the desired impact with emotional control, which is the toughest thing, right?
You know, and it sounds like it's a mindset that you can, listen to this, for 3 or 4 times and absorb it and then start to just sort of use it in the style of how you want to coach. But it also just sounds like it could be a lot of work, both mentally to be alert, to be able to stay on target for this as a coach. But I also wonder, is there sort of a method from day one that you can implement that are very tangible things that you can follow? Let's say the coach needs to be that player who has to just follow the coaching for a second. Do you have a kind of, sequence of events that they could follow that would help them implement this?
Yeah, it's probably the thing that's taken me the longest to develop. Definitely a good 10 years to get the framework to go, okay, I'm here, Mark. I'm up for taking the first step. What's the first step? What's the second? What's the third? Where's my support mechanism? So first step is always establish your own awareness of what you actually do compared with what you think you do. So film yourself. That's number one. Do not shortcut that. So if you're a coach that goes, I want to know how good a coach I am, don't follow score lines, establish what you're like in practice and game times. If you can't film yourself with a chest in games, just put a Bluetooth on so you can hear your voice. You'll be able to see from the corner videos, etc., how you're acting, how you're running around, but actually establish data. Then we go through that journey of getting everyone to understand, every player, every coach to understand what is it we're working towards. So I use the analogy of a lighthouse. So I've got to, with the coach I work with, ask them now is, and I used to use different words, but this is a quite easy thing to connect with, is if I was to ask you as a coach, if I'm now watching the dream game with the players you've got, this is a match now, and I'm watching, what would I see, hear, and feel from the players, and what would I see, hear, and feel from you as a coach? Can you just tell me what it would be? And the coach shares that and said, okay, well, that's your lighthouse, that's your reference. Every single player, every coach needs to know what that lighthouse is. And it's lighthouse because it doesn't move. It's your reference point. So now we say, if that's your lighthouse, where are we? We baseline it, as Alan said. Let's see where we are in reality, not in chats, in showing, identify the gaps, and then put your intervention in your playing of the gaps. But it has to be behavior first. Performance is a behavior, not an outcome. What are the behaviors we need as a coach? What are the behaviors we need as a player? And that's where you set up, once they've agreed the Lighthouse with the players, you set up your non-negotiables, the 1 or 2, maybe 3 things that you would say, if we do this every time, if we can only pick 1, 2, or 3, it will give us the biggest bang for our buck. It will give us the biggest impact to play well. What would they be? And they will be behavior linked. They will not be about ability. They will not be about tech. They will be the behavior linked stuff. Alan shared a few. Before, I worked with a top flight rugby team, many international players for the World Cup, and theirs was get there first. So again, it might mean nothing, but it's asking them, what does that mean to you? So the players came up with, well, we recognize when we get tackled or we're down or the ref calls the whistle and it's not a decision we think is going to happen or we agree with, doesn't matter. We will always get back in a position first. Doesn't matter where we go. We'll get up, we'll get back, whatever happens. So there, forget was a huge impact on the way they played the whole game. And it caught a lot of opposition out because they weren't affected by poor ref calls. If there was an overturn or transition, they were there. They were ready to go. Stop in play. They were getting back first. So you can relate that to basketball, how impactful that would be. So it's understanding those things and then understanding, okay, what would be unacceptable, what would be exceptional? What would they look like? Here's the key thing. Anything we agree, they have to share and we have to share. But what does that look like? Can you even show me now for the next 20 seconds what that looks like? It can't be a theory, a word on a board. It has to be real. Then this is where it starts to get useful as a reference in. If you've got 2 coaches or more than just yourself, being yourself, this is really tough. If you've got more than 2 coaches, we always, if you segment your practice and we relate it to basketball, you may have a head coach, but obviously you may have lead coaches for a certain phase of your practice. So whoever the lead coach is, leads on the tech and the tack. Whoever the support coach is, leads and scans for behaviors, which will be your non-negotiables. So therefore, the responsibility becomes so much easier for the lead coach that I don't have to look for everything. There's a role and responsibility for my support coach. And this is another thing, Nick. I don't think coaches are very good at giving clear direction and permission and roles for their support coaches. They it's not clear. So then they sort of bimbling around, like stepping in, when can I do this? So this is another important element of the whole PDS process. But once that's connected with, okay, I'm supporting, I'm just looking at the behaviors, here's the permissions, you can call a reset on that. You can whisper from here, right, we need a one-to-one switch. This guy's being lazy, no one spotted it. Okay, rotate him out. I'll do my intervention, whatever it might be. And then we just follow that principle of, we develop the rule of 3, which is getting players to understand what excellence is, doing the best you can in the present moment. That's all we're asking you to do. Once you're doing that, if you're unacceptable, attempt to commit to change, to get back to where you want to be. If you can't, you can reach out to another player to help you get back if you feel yourself negative spiral, but do it early. If you don't understand, you can reach out and ask other players, but see if you can work it out for yourself. That's at 1. At 2 is, I'm acceptable at 1. I'm pursuing excellence, but I'm continually scanning my teammates to make sure they're acceptable within the pre-agreed behaviors. If they're not, I'm going to reach out and have an effective impact. Back to the 3 A's. If I've reached out to someone, here's what's going to happen. They have to accept, they have to acknowledge, hand touch if they're close, or a thumb up if they're a distance. They have to act on it. If they're not, I'm going to follow it through. That's unacceptable. We have to be real with what we're doing. If that's not happening, we go to 3, which is coach. Coach then steps in and an array of interventions they can use. So here's the key with the coach. When the coach is given the players, they've shared this with the players, the coach clearly says to the players, your aim is not to get to 3. So what I want you guys to do, I want you to problem solve live yourself. I want you to, if you're not committing to something, I want you to change it, or one of your teammates spots it. If they reach out to you, you have to accept. I need to see that acknowledgement. And I need to see action. This is what I'm looking for. I'm going to give you time to do that live. I'm not just going to step in. But if you're not, guess what? I'm going to step in. And it's my choice of what I'm going to do. I might rotate one of you out. I might call a timeout. I might go, right, back, reset, guys. Comms not good enough. Back to corner lines. We're back in again. Whatever it might be. But the coach has now got a reference tool to know I've now got something to work on before I know when to step in. And then we just follow that basic principle. If I'm going to speak to a player, What are you seeing? If they didn't commit, nail that first. Okay, show me commitment. But if they're committing, okay, what did you see? What were your choices? Why did you go for that one? What did you change, if anything? If they're not sure, you can go, well, actually, this is what I'm seeing. Or if they're not sure and you know who the player is, Stevie, can you speak to Johnny? How long do you need? 2 minutes, no problem. So these are the subtle interventions, but it starts with understanding yourself first, film yourself, look back at it, watch it, take notes, find somebody that knows about this stuff. So someone like Alan and myself, we do like online stuff where people can send us videos. We look through it. They've already looked through it. And we have a live Skype. We help them out. If you haven't got someone like that, find someone that isn't caught up in the tech tack, can look at you, how you're interacting. They look at it, then have a conversation. And it's giving you some baseline awareness of your trends to focus on where am I great? Where am I not great? Are there trends when I'm different in practice and in games? I need to know what they are. Is it killing my team or is it helping my team play well? Okay, what do I need to change? And that's that courage to go, it's my responsibility to be the best coach I can be to have the greatest impact on the players. And if I'm saying to every player, I want you to be the best you can be. I want you to look at your video. I want you to grow. I want you to become better every single day. If I'm saying that they have to do that, I have to do it myself. That's the basic responsibility as a coach. And if you're not, if a manager, a salesman, a teacher wasn't willing to do that, you wouldn't want them teaching your kid. You wouldn't want them governing your company. Exactly the same for a sports team. So that's the basic stages, Nick.
Wow. Alan, let me ask you this. How long do you feel it took you to kind of assimilate this and feel good about what you were doing, and how hard was that?
Oh, great question. How long? It's difficult to say. I'm not going to give you an exact time frame, but it first of all, I had to buy in, Nick. I had to believe in it first. And like I said to you, the experience I had with Mark when he turned up to a national team camp and he was there with us for 2 days, I believe it was, Mark. By the time he left, I was all in. I was all in. And now you got to remember, I played for very dictatorial coaches. Not all of them, but that was the way I was grooved, let's say. And that's the way I was wired, and that's the way I coached. And then Mark, you know, I was fortunate enough to have a connection there. And when he came down, I went home from that national team camp going, man, I'm not a very good coach. and at that point, and that wasn't Mark's motive, but at that point I was like, man, I'm a coach. I'm a national team coach. You feel good about yourself. But it was just an awakening to actually there's a better way to do this. And it wasn't about me feeling I was a bad coach. Like Mark said, I've gone and put my stamp on the PDS principles. I'm Alan Keane coaching. I'm not Mark Bennett, you know, and I think any of my players you will speak to will say, like when we get to the end of the season, always the new guys just thank me for helping them to mature in how they think about playing and how they think about the game. So it probably took me a weekend with Mark to buy in, to see the value, and I saw it pretty quick because Mark, if you don't mind me saying, Mark doesn't know the rules of basketball incomplete, let's say. You know, he doesn't know the intricacies of the game. You know, he understands sports in great detail because he's worked with amazing coaches all over the world at different levels and different sports. But he's not a basketball coach. And when he said to me, the second day, the morning practice, now we're leaving for the European Championships 1 week from this camp. And he said to me, can I take the practice the next morning? And I look at him and I think he's crazy. Because I know at that point he doesn't know anything about basketball in terms of what we need to, like, he ain't going to cover 1-3-1 zone defense and trap the corners for us, you know?
Right.
So I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. I'm really interested. He's got me intrigued. And I said to him, yeah, go for it, mate. You're all in. And I said, what you need me for? He said, just stand on the side, you know, and just that's it. Just let me to it. And when I told my assistant coaches, even the physio was going crazy. And the team manager were like, you guys, you're nuts. What are you doing? You know, we've got to get ready. The guys are not ready. And he took that practice, Nick, and it was awesome. It was awesome, you know. The level of commitment, the communication, the effective communication, the effort, the energy, it was nice. It was real nice. And I'm not saying that because he's on the call. He knows how I feel about it. I probably still have that video somewhere if I go into the archives and dig it out maybe. I don't know. It's quite a while ago, Mark, maybe coming up on 10 years, you know, we're getting older. But So the buy-in was very quick, Nick, because I saw the value and I saw the impact it had on the players, which is the most important thing for me at that particular time. How long did it take me to deliver these concepts and principles well? I'm still on that journey, and I'm getting better. That's all I can say to you is I know I'm getting better, and I'm getting better at the deepness of it. Like I'm recognizing now my triggers. I'm hyper aware of scanning. I'm hyper aware of the value of scanning, of stepping back, of relinquishing control, of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, of being comfortable, of I'm not worried about judgment. And a lot of people will still judge, and that's fine. I'm absolutely really at ease with all that. And there's some of the better conversations I have, Nick, is coaches who don't believe in it. And I'm not out here trying to convert people and prophesize it, but I am out here to back myself with what I truly believe in and stand firm on my feet that this is an effective way to coach. Now, what I will say to you is this. Based on the professional players I've had the past couple of years, and I spoke to a few of them about this. So let me give you an example of one player that we've already talked briefly about. He told me when he came out of college in the States, he was so programmed with what to think. He actually took it to another level and knew what the coach was thinking. He said, I said, it was so repetitive. He said, when the coach blew up and in certain moments, I knew exactly what he would say pretty much word for word before he said it. He said it was very programmed as he described it. And he said, we got to the end of the first year. He said, with you, he said, it was really difficult for me to buy in because I wasn't what I was used to. So a lot of time and investment one-to-ones. He came back and played for us this year in his second year. And I'll tell you what, Nick, it was the equivalent of having another coach in the practices. And it made my life incredibly easier as a coach because it allowed me, he took a lot of responsibility and I didn't push it on him. It was that building process from last year. Now, let me give you the true context of it. He got injured, broke two of his fingers at Christmas, returned to America because he was done for the rest of the season. We were a different team without that guy because it took me a year to invest these concepts and principles with him to really see the fruit of the labor. Mm-hmm. And this year he was, Mark, you must admit, he was flourishing with us this year, the little bit you saw. But even when you speak to him, like Mark, we might explain this in a minute. After every game, I'll just give you the background because it'll explain the story better. After every game, all the players submit a review on a WhatsApp group, and all the coaches are on there. And the players will give a review in a 3-stage process. And the review goes like this, Nick. They first of all review their own performance, and it's always underpinned by the non-negotiables. So they would review and be honest about, yeah, you know what, on a scale of 0 to 10, my commitment tonight was a 6. And it was a 6 because it looked like X, Y, Z. And then they'll review other things. It's an open forum, like let them go in any direction they want. But the only criteria is that we do acknowledge the non-negotiables first, because that's what you agreed was critical. We couldn't go without. And then the second phase of that review process for them on the WhatsApp group after the game is they review the team's performance. So they'll go self first, team second, and then what gives me the most value once we get past the fluff and they're not afraid anymore, and we do have to address that, they review the coach's performance. So they'll review my performance as a head coach, and they'll review my 2 assistants' performances as within their roles. And there is a time frame where that's not authentic until you really unpick that and unbox that with them, which I've had to do most years. But I didn't have to do it this year because AJ modeled it. That player I had from the year before modeled it in the direction, like if I didn't coach well, he had no reservations. He felt safe. It's back to psychological safety. He felt safe and comfortable to say that, to put himself in that, what some might say, that's a vulnerable position. Whereas the new import players we brought in, they were telling me coach did a really good job. This is all about us, the players. No, that's not true. I was emotionally led in one game and I didn't help you with any solutions or guide you in any direction at all. So I think I've given you a long-winded answer to your question.
Well, I do want to throw this out there.
I can answer it, Nick.
Okay.
I can answer it probably in a different ways. If I share with you, and I want to link in the 2 things I answered there. First, your question, Nick, is how long did it take him to get competent at it? There's levels. It's the difference between cooks and chefs. So Alan's working towards his Michelin star chefs now. It started off as a cook. So it's kind of, clunky, and then it's actually, this is smooth, and then go, oh my God, there's more to it. There's more, and you just keep growing. But every coach will go through these stages, and some may already be accelerated. So I'm going from worst case scenario through lack of self-awareness in the moment. So they don't even know what they're doing in the moment, how effective they are. Then you have a self-reflection after. Now I knew I was wound up, or I knew I was ineffective. Once I've had an hour, 2 hours next day to think about it. Then you get to the point where you're aware in the moment, but you either choose to do nothing about it, or you don't have the skills to do anything about it. That may be in knowledge or the ability to apply. The next level is, I'm aware of it and I'm changing most of the time, but it's not every time. And that's where most coaches get to. But when you get there, you're actually in the moment is the same as an hour, 2 hours later when you get the video. That's when you're going to be a great coach, because I'm not saying you always make the right choices, but you'll make the right choices based on your knowledge and how you want the game to be played. And I've never met a coach that is every time there in a game. But if you're there most of the time in a game, you'll be better than 99% of coaches on this planet in any sport. So it's kind of this journey we need to go through. And that's why we always need to, this is where it links into the second thing Alan picked up on. I use what I call hot and cold reviews. And they're really important. And this is how I find I can accelerate coaches, and they use the same with the players in their journey of development. A hot review is basically after every single practice session, after every game, I'm linked to a WhatsApp or some Slack, I know, with other teams I'm working with in the States. Is a hot review. If we used WhatsApp, straight away the coach has to, straight to me and the other coaches are in that group, is review self, their own behaviors first before the tech-tac, how they communicated, how effective they were, then the other coaches, they review them, then the team, the players. The sequence is the most junior coach must go first in a hot review. The most senior coach, head coach, goes last. The reason for this is we don't want a head coach's review influencing the junior coaches. So it's always this way. I'm listening to it. I'm connecting with it. I'm picking it apart, but not sharing anything until everyone's gone. Then I may step in and ask certain questions or specifics if I think they're a bit emotionally led or they haven't been detailed in what they're saying. Then we do a cold review. The cold review can be a day later, 2 days later. It's a pre-agreed time. When they've had time to reflect, it may have had time to look at the video, and then they do exactly the same. Self, other coaches, team. What we're looking for is often what you'll find is there's a big difference between the hot and the cold review. Generally, the cold review is accurate. The hot review is inaccurate. So what we're aiming for is if I can get a coach to be more accurate in the hot review, that allows them to now I'm aware of when I'm unacceptable or I'm starting to lose it or I'm no longer scanning, I'm caught up, whatever it might be. Now I can put an intervention to change. Then it's my job as a coach support to give the coach tools to use when they have those challenges. And then it's up to me to be relentless and not let that coach off the hook, but also while I'm being relentless, to be supportive. Back to what I'm asking the coach to do with the players. So Alan will tell you, I'm sure, if he's honest, that some people won't get me straight away because if we agree something, I follow it through. There isn't a maybe or not. So once I agree something with the coach, I'm relentless with it. If a coach doesn't put a hot review in, and with Alan, sometimes that hasn't happened, guys, hot reviews. Remind me what we agreed. But it's that thing of having a balance. I need to manage my state well, the same as a coach does with a player. But I'm empathic, so I'm understanding them, but it doesn't mean that I say I'm going to agree or disagree with them. But it's always up to the coach to decide what they're going to do. I'll never tell a coach you must do this. I'll challenge them as the reasons why. I may express options or we'll talk about it. But it's always up to the coach at the end that I'm working with to make the decision about what they're going to do. But once they say they're going to commit to something, I'm going to hold them accountable. Does that make sense? Would that be fair, Alan?
Absolutely nailed it.